Hello everyone and welcome back to RubberStamps.com. Today we are going to be creating 2 cards using this collaboration with JC Creations. What we're going to be focusing on today is how using different colors can totally change the vibe and the mood of your card. So both of these cards are going to be pretty easy, but we're going to go over some color theory and how to totally change up the vibe of your card just based on the colors that you choose. But before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to see more content like this. And with that, let's get started. So to start, we are going to take our stamp block and this really cute stamp that we have, stick it to the block, and we are going to be using pigment ink because the first step that we're doing for this card is to stamp this and then emboss it. And I have just found that pigment ink sticks a lot better to the embossing powder, so that's what we're going to be using for today. For the first one, we are going to be using clear embossing powder, so you can go ahead and sprinkle that on top of your ink. And then you can just tap that off to remove any excess. Double check that everything is totally covered in the embossing powder. And then you can save your extra embossing powder for later. Then we're going to use the heat gun and emboss this. And we can set this aside. We're going to move on to the next one. You can see how this is just a clear embossing powder, just adds a nice shine. For the second card, with the different colors that we're going to be using, we are actually using this black glitter embossing powder. So you can go ahead and sprinkle that over the ink. Whoa. And then you can tap off the extra and save that for later. Then you can go ahead and heat gun emboss this as well. So it's a little hard to tell on camera, but there is definitely a difference between the 2 shapes. This one has the glitter in it, so there's a little bit more color there. And then this one is just the clear, so it's just a straight black. So they look pretty similar, but just a few differences there that are going to work really nicely with the colors that we have picked out. So for the first card, these are the colors that we have picked out. You can see they're kind of a retro sunset-y vibe. One thing to note is that these are all the colors right here. They're not super vibrant. They're a little bit more muted in tone, and that's what's going to give us that more retro look. I think that that looks really nice with this font. So I think that's going to be a fun combination. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, is keeping the tones similar throughout your colors to create a certain aesthetic. If you're going for a certain time period or just a certain vibe, just remember to keep the tones similar. You don't have to, but for this card, that's what we're doing, keeping the tones similar. So we're going to do that sunset vibe using these markers. So you can just take your marker and start coloring in each of the shapes. And we are going to move on to the next sun shape. For this one, you can see the colors that I've chosen over here. They definitely don't all match in the same tone like the last one did, but this I think is just a really fun and bright and playful aesthetic. So that's what we're going to go for with this, using all pinks and purples. And here we have both cards. You can see that they have totally different looks just based on the colors that we chose and the embossing powders that we chose. One thing that I want to mention is that it's really helpful to test out your markers ahead of time on a scrap piece of paper so that you can figure out exactly what colors you want and you don't waste time actually coloring in your stamps just to find out that you don't like the colors that you chose. So definitely pick your colors ahead of time, test them out on a scrap piece of paper before you actually color in your stamps. Alright, so for the first card, we are going to take our piece of cardstock. We can set these off to the side, and then we're going to be using this ink and our ink blender to just add a little bit of shading around the edge. You definitely don't want to add too much, but you do want to keep blending it until you've gotten the shade that you want. Next, we're going to place our words at the top of the card, and we're going to take our acrylic block and press them in to remove them. But that's helpful because you're able to get the exact placement and just transfer it to the block. Then we're going to ink it up and stamp it. And because this is kind of like a retro vibe, I actually like that it looks a little bit distressed. And the way that you can achieve that look is by not firmly pressing on all of the parts of the stamp. So for example, when you push this down, you maybe would push a little bit harder around the edges so that the inside is not as defined. So that's just one thing to keep in mind if you want to go for this more kind of distressed look. Next, we're going to take these 3D adhesive dots, place them on the back of our sun, and glue it to the card. Alright, and then we can set that one aside as we move on to the next card, which is our pink card. For this one, we're going to change up how we have this laid out, and we're going to stamp Hello Friend in different locations. So we're going to put hello at the top and friend at the bottom. Alright, and then next we are actually going to stamp on this with the stamp so that we have an outline that we can really easily follow to cut this out with an X-Acto knife. Next, we're going to take this top layer and use this 3D adhesive tape to stick it on top. That way it pops up a little bit off the page. Now we're going to put a little bit of glue on the back of this so that we can slide it around once it's inside, and then we're going to slide it in the top and get it into place. And we don't need much, just a little bit to hold this once it's in. Then we can add the remaining piece to the top part of the card. And then I just added a few more embellishments using these stick-on jewels. Alright, and then just to add a little bit more to this first card, we just went in with 2 different cardstocks, cut them out to size, and glued that all together for this final card as well. So here you have 2 completely different cards using the same stamp set, All we did is change up the colors and it gives it a totally different vibe. Let us know which one you like better in the comments below. But before we are done, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to see more content like this. We will see you next time.